I mean, right on the border, but we were on the Nebraska side of the state line. So I grew up in a very, very rural area.
Okay, hi, my name is Yoko Rowing. I'm a LPO financial advisor at the Zen Wealth Strategies here in North Platte, Nebraska. Also a director of multicultural advocacy at Hope Esperanza here in North Platte. Today we are going to have an interview with Gary Parson. He's been with North Platte Chamber for last 8 years, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I know you guys all know Gary's face and what he does, but we just wanted to have this friendly talks about the diversity. So, would you mind to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure.
On the last 8 years, you were moving from the Sydney on the chamber, from there to North Platte, Nebraska for last 8 years, and you've been working and pouring your sweat and equity into this community. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you evolved within North Platte communities.
Well, I grew up on a small farm ranch right on the Nebraska-Wyoming border. I mean, right on the border, but we were on the Nebraska side of the state line. So I grew up in a very, very rural area. And in fact, the county didn't even have a town in the whole county. So that's how rural it was. So people say they're from rural western Nebraska. They don't have anything.
This is not bad, yeah.
So, as with a lot of farm families, as you get the third or fourth generation, there's just not enough land to sustain yourself. So I learned to work construction as a young kid too, and so I worked my way through college and knew that was probably my avenue to try to better myself and to do something different. The Vietnam War had just ended, and nobody was really getting into the military at that point. They were all kind of getting out, and so that ended when I was a senior in high school. So I knew that the military was probably not an option. So I worked my way through college and felt I kind of got double the education, because when you're working all the time and instead of getting your education, you really do kind of figure out life and figure out what makes it work, and you got to work hard to get anywhere.
Absolutely.
So I actually got into the newspaper business. I had a journalism degree, mass communications.
I didn't know that about you.
Went to junior college, and then at that time it was Kearney State. Now it's University of Nebraska at Kearney. So I wound up the editor of 3 different newspapers, the last one being in Sydney, Nebraska. And from that, I got real involved in the community and the Junior Chamber of Commerce, the JCs, and that led to an opportunity for me to run their Chamber of Commerce. Then when Governor Orr got elected, the first female Republican governor in the history of the United States, she offered me a job to be the director of her Western office. So I traveled 37 counties in Western Nebraska. It was a fascinating thing as a very young person at the time to get to know so many other communities in the state and across all of central and western Nebraska. And that's where I started developing a lot of relationships as well as my volunteer activities like in the JCs. And I had an opportunity to be state president of 3 different organizations. So I've got a lot of experience all through Nebraska. From there, the community of Sydney hired me to be their economic development director. So I was doing that. I got about 10, 11 years in there. We were having a lot of good successes in growing the economy and really growing the community. And so the city manager's position came open. So the guy coerced me into that. And so,
I love that expression.
Yeah, but they wanted to keep all my connections in the economic development world, so just kind of incorporated that into the city manager's position. So I was doing both of those things and running about 14 different departments at 110 employees, and just a lot of great experiences doing that, as well as keeping involved in a lot of statewide activities. North Platte had reached out to me on 3 previous occasions.
I see.
Once as a city administrator, once as the potential economic development person here. Finally, it was at that stage of life, my kids were grown. Didn't have to worry about uprooting them from the community, and so the position came open in North Platte. They, they asked me to interview, and I did, and they hired me, and so they really wanted to. North Platte, as we all know, always has had a very stable economy, good employers, kind of a breadbasket of the farm ranch community in the Sand Hills, but it really had never. It was a little bit stagnant. Population is the same 40 years from 1980 on.
Right.
And so we really had to challenge ourselves and our organization as a chamber development group to diversify our economy. And so to do that, we needed to open up the potential of being able to recruit industry in here that might need rail.
Right.
And so we worked with the Union Pacific Railroad on trying to establish an industrial rail park here because of Bailey Yard and the massive congestion that goes through there.
Yes.
It really almost could not allow for access to the main line throughout those years. 80 years of Bailey Yard's been there. So we were able to get over that. We also started working hard on trying to transform downtown into something special.
It is.
We had those old ugly awnings. They looked like they should have fell down 10 years earlier, and it hid the beauty of those historic buildings down there. You couldn't tell where one building started, another one started, and you had about 50% vacancy down there. So we were successful in getting that done. The city followed suit with investing a lot of infrastructure dollars in there, and we were successful in getting a grant to for streetscapes and community development block grant, and then we had the mall situation where it was like 60-70% vacant, and we lost the big box stores, and everybody was really upset about that, and it was just kind of a sad thing. You almost thought, well, that thing's just going to get scraped and be repurposed for something else. We were able to work with a developer, a team, to transform that into what you're seeing now. We had to pass 4 different tax initiatives through the city council to get that, to entice the developer to invest that kind of money. At the same time, we kept diversifying and recruiting new things out of our industry and our Twin Rivers Business Park with the chamber. And then 3 years ago, next week, we started working with Sustainable Beef Leaders.
It's been already that long?
Yeah, it's been 3 years since I was introduced to the group. And they had some experiences where they had tried to do this in other communities with no success, and with the communities accepting or embracing it. So we knew we had one shot at trying to sell them on North Platte. Right. But a lot of them already had connections here, and they're farming, ranching families, and their story was pretty compelling. The big 4 conglomerates kind of control the whole market, and they were taking all the risk, and their way of life was really almost threatened because of their inability to, financially cash flow everything, and the other people were making all the money. Yeah. So they took a leap of faith and decided the only way they were going to change that narrative was to do it themselves. So we laid out a plan for them on what we thought we could do, and a site we thought we could make work. And we really worked behind the scenes in a very confidential manner for about 6 months before we launched that publicly. We started working in August of 2020, and we didn't announce it until March of 2021. So at that point, we knew we were going to have to start going through all the processes. So we needed to control the narrative and the story. So we did. And everybody knew at that point, the only way we're going to increase our workforce is to bring a diversified workforce in here. And so we went through all those public hearings. We had 16 of them over 18 months. That's a lot.
That is a
5 different agencies. And then on top of that, 2 additional public hearings on the county level But the rewarding and the unique thing about that is that every one of those wound up being a unanimous vote by the public bodies. That's pretty amazing.
That's great.
You know, when you see the mall, you know, only survived the whole thing down there surviving by one vote margin, and then so many other things. You know, we hardly ever get a unanimous vote, but
Right.
on this we did. And so that showed me that the community was ready for change. It was ready to embrace all the opportunities that come with it
Right.
and meet the challenges, because there will be. You know, nobody's hiding the fact that we won't have challenges with housing.
Right,
We're
exactly.
working hard to recruit new developers in here to bring additional housing opportunities for everybody. And then the exciting challenge of recruiting the workforce in here. And so we know it's got to diversify our workforce and the culture of our community significantly. And I think people are ready to embrace that. You know, I give a lot of presentations to a lot of groups in North Platte, talk about all the wonderful things we have
Right.
going on. But it inevitably comes down to people are inquisitive about what the workforce is going to
Sure.
look like and how we're going to recruit and so forth, and how sustainable beef is going to do that. But if you have good jobs, people will follow if you have a place for them to live. I'm
Definitely.
totally convinced of that. You know, everybody fights the labor force thing now, but you know, we've elevated the wage scale. You know, when you have more demand than you have supply, it's just naturally going to raise the tide, and everybody then makes a little better living. And so when you have good jobs, you have a fighting chance to bring people in here. And when I get asked about that at community events or public presentations and so forth, somebody finally gets around to asking about the workforce. You know, you can tell they really want to ask.
Right,
it, you know?
right, of course.
Yeah. So I say, so I just tell them, I said, okay, looking over the audience, I want everybody to stand up right now. That's a Native American. You know, and very rarely do you have somebody stand up. And I said, you know what? Every one of us came from somebody that immigrated to the United States, and some of us are
Amen to
third,
that.
fourth generation. But our ancestors and the people we're recruiting were given an opportunity in America. And we feel that North Platte is ready to embrace that as this all-American city that embraces people of all ethnicity and cultural backgrounds. And we need to be a warm, welcoming, embracing community, just like you know, our ancestors had to go through a lot of challenges and language barriers, adapting to a whole different way of life. But they worked hard.
Right.
And I will take people who work hard any day, all day long, over people who want to just use the government system to
There we
survive.
go. I'm the same
And
way.
so-
I'm the same way. So let me ask you this, because you know, at this point, of course, Gary has a lot of great bullet points in his resume that probably overflowing to 10 pages, or maybe we need to publish you another book about the biography, right? But here's the thing: it's very resonated me with the you know, you came from the very rural area, right? You
Yeah,
said.
yeah.
So how's the change that we embraced here? I mean, like you said, you know, like sustainable build is coming. That is definitely a imminent force of changes here, I feel.
Right,
And then,
right.
you know, even over the years, I've seen drastic but positive change into a North Platte of the Canteen district, because I love the downtown area. And then, you know, when I first came over here in 2014, I was a bit kind of shocked about, you know, emptiness of the downtown area. And then I feel, you know, tremendous urge for the North Platte to go into growth, because I see a lot of, you know, I saw a lot of opportunities back then, and it still is. And then the demand is going higher and higher nowadays, right? And so you're talking about, you know, now we are going to bring over a lot of diversities here. And also, as you see, you know, it is rapidly increasing, really, in our community. And as you know, the part of the non-profit organization Hope Esperanza, we do offer a language access to those who doesn't have an ability to maybe speak fluent English. You know, sometimes help with the court documents, legal assistance. and whatever they need. I mean, there's going to be a need is right there. So we wanted to see, how this diversity is going to change and impact in this community, and how we can moving into the sustainable communities together, because sustainability comes in so many different levels.
It does.
Correct?
Yep, absolutely.
Like financially, economically, and also community-wise. I mean, what is a sustainable community looks like to you?
Well, you need champions like yourself,
Oh.
that are always
You're not going to
always
get the
keeping the
cookies from me
discussion,
today.
but you help keep the discussion on the surface, so that we can adapt and move into this. I learned the diversity at a pretty young age. As a farm kid, you're always looking to get a few dollars in your pocket,
Right.
and Grandpa liked to give me a lot of work to do, but he didn't pay. He said, your paycheck's called experience.
Oh my goodness. I love that. That's a classic dad moves.
So
Yeah.
we had some neighbors that grew potatoes. And so they would always have the migrant workers come up. And so I worked alongside a lot of the migrants as a young kid. And I just so admired their work ethic and the family togetherness. And I was just so impressed. And it really did impact me as a young person and give me a different perspective on life, because they risked everything and they worked very, very hard to have a paycheck so they could send it home or go home in the wintertime, so they'd have some sustainability in their life, but they had to come to America to find work. And so it impacted me a lot, and it just changed my whole perspective of the world. And so to this day, if I'm hanging around people that were Hispanic culture, you just feel a kinship to them.
That's good.
And so and that's the kind of thing, we've got it's one person at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a rotten egg here or two.
Of course.
We got plenty of that already in North
Right.
Platte, to some extent. So it's but it's the only way we're going to grow our workforce. It's the only way we're going to grow our population, because Nebraska farm families are smaller in today's world. There's not as many kids in the school system in the rural areas. They've all migrated to the larger metropolitan areas because that's where the jobs, the careers were. And people don't want to work that hard anymore.
Yeah,
they
I
want
think
to do a
a
different
new
type of work.
generation has a different work ethic. I noticed that. But I think it's beautiful that even more so that we are going to have increasing diversity. It's really adding to different flavors, because it is not that we are all forced into the change. It is not. Think about it. The world is evolving already, with or without you working towards the evolving. But world is always changing. World is always progressing into a different form of lifestyle.
Right.
So how can we adapt that? It's hard to think about. You can just stay in your own bubble. That's okay, but that shouldn't be hindering from understanding other people that is trying to come over here and then settle, and also trying to be the citizen or a community member here in North Platte, because I think both ends needs to work together to minimizing the culture gap and has assimilations.
And that's where I think our younger generation is really going to be instrumental, because I think they're going to be more embracing of everything. And I'll tell you, there's not an employer in town won't take somebody that's willing to work. They'll show up.
Yes.
And they'll show up clean.
That's right.
And they would embrace any kind of a worker they could get, because unfortunately, jobs are so plentiful. People know they can walk across the street and get a job. So sometimes their attention to detail, or to understand that this is an everyday. Your job is an everyday thing. It's not just whenever you feel like it.
Right.
And so you're going to find every employer in town embracing this, and they're gonna be very happy we're bringing additional workforce in here. So if you could bring the breadwinner
Mm-hmm.
of the family, you know, that can have the really good, well-paid job, that has a good benefits, family benefits and so forth. They'll bring other family members with them,
Oh, yes.
especially the more inviting and appealing we are. And so that, it comes back to, we've got to really, really work hard on workforce housing, and we're working with a lot of developers who are trying to adapt to that. We're trying to, you know, it's so difficult with housing because of the cost of the
Yes.
materials and labor and land and infrastructure, everything is just so expensive. And so to get it to those levels where it's affordability factor
Yes.
is going to be the key. And so we've been fairly successful bringing a lot of additional multi-unit housing in. So that is really good for transition. You know, you transition until you get comfortable with your job, comfortable with the community,
Right.
and then at some point you can bring your family here and have a home of your own. And so it's going to be one of those transitional stair-step things, and we've just got a lot of work to do, but we've got, and everybody has to have a very open mind. And I think we even saw that at the public hearings, you know, working with sustainability. Early on, I could tell you it was a 50-50 crowd.
Oh, you can probably tell,
You know,
yes.
those
Yeah.
that were skeptical, those were downright against it.
Right.
Those were kind of on the fence, you know. But everybody seemed to be open-minded enough they would listen to as everything emerged and came forward and educated themselves on it. And how technology today is really changing the whole workforce too. You know,
Oh, absolutely.
and the types of work jobs that you have. And so by the end of, we got through the 18-month process and the 16 public hearings. The last ones were, I wouldn't say it's unanimous, but there was just a handful of people who still had mitigating concerns. I think it's more about the location than it was what it was.
Right.
And so we just kept seeing a stronger and stronger contingent of people saying, hey, you know, this is going to be great for our farming, ranching neighbors. It's going to be great for our economy.
Right.
And when you say $1.2 billion economic impact,
Now
just
that's-
from one employer
That's
annually,
big.
that's not just on the
Just
surface,
from-
that's
yeah, that's
annual.
annual.
And one of the greatest quotes I ever heard was, and you just figured out, and it's reality, but you know, we get throw so many figures thrown at us, you know, in today's world, millions, billions,
Oh,
trillions.
sure.
So, but if you had so put it in this perspective, if you had 1 million seconds,
Mm-hmm.
that equals 12 days. If you have 1 billion seconds, that equals 32 years. 12 days, 32 years. That's the difference in the type of impact this one company, one business is going to have on our economy. And it's going to bring a lot of ancillary type businesses with them. And so we're working with a lot of those companies right now. So when they decide who they're going to do business with, then in fact we will embrace those folks and help them get into business here too, and bring and help them with their workforce issues. So
I really love that idea. You know, like we are really, I mean, North Platte is changing every day.
it is.
I mean,
yeah.
look at the beautiful mall, right?
Yeah.
Like we having
Yeah,
a
it's exciting.
fantastic like restaurants coming in, like
Yeah.
more things to do, maybe entertainments.
New
and
rec
then-
center.
Yeah, new rec center. I mean, you can't really say no to that. And then I think our city is really trying hard to making this place a very attractive place for so many community members. And then, you know, along this way, I really wanted to see that, you know, the community really, or employers, trying to put the times into to educating their coworkers, educating their employees about diversity situation, because, you know, I'm coming from the different countries and I'm not a citizen yet. Now, that reflects me a lot about how I do my business and how people perceives me in this community as well. And you know, I had a definitely challenge cut out for me when I came over here, because I look like completely different from, you know, let's just say white persons. And at the time I was door knocking everywhere, so everybody was like, what are you doing here? You know, that kind of comments. And so, but you know, over the years I learned about people are really willing to learn, really. If we give them a opportunity,
Right.
and they actually open up to talk to you, it's nothing really to fear about talking about the diversity issues. You know, it is all about knowledge. I think knowledge is power, and then I think North Platte can be grow into the right directions when we give the instructions and tools to the community, and community embraces at the same times. You know, so I'm really excited about this International Bazaar, which is a third
Very cool.
annual.
Yeah.
It started out in 2018, and so this is our third year, but we are going to have this one at the DNA Event Center. So we are talking about 4,000 to 5,000 attendee to expected that traffic this year.
Wow.
So I know it's been
I
long
can't wait
time
for the
coming.
food.
I know, long time coming. But think about this. This year I reached out to many different sectors, including community colleges, public school here, healthcare system, you know, big retailers and other companies. Now they are pouring into and then finding out the value of why this is important to have in North Platte. I think it's a very positive feedback that so far I have given. So what do you think that this kind of event is going to impact in North Platte?
Well, it really draws attention to how cultures, you know, gives people more detail about how cultures are and the people who make up those, and you know, even to the palate, to the food, you know. But then their belief system and so forth, you know, and so it's great exposure for everybody. It really is, and you know, you should be applauded for a tremendous effort in rallying people to this and growing it every year.
Oh,
you know, and,
well, that's a little bit much of a compliment, you know.
it will continue to grow. I mean, can you imagine?
And then, you know, I don't ever do that for reciprocation ever. I just wanted to see that, you know, North Platte is going to be really branded into it and then feel welcoming. Everybody feels like, hey, you know, if I have this local resources that I can bridge out to you, you know, you can go and grab it, you know, and then people is going to be appreciated in this community and it wants to grow here and then stay for a long, long time, so we could have the true sustainability here, you know, so we can keep growing into the right direction with a great attitude. So that's what we are looking for. But thank you so much today for Gary for having to me. Yeah, it's been always a pleasure to talking to Gary with the North Platte Chamber. He has been done a tremendous job here. So I really appreciate his times today. But you guys can go into a www.hopefulnp.org, or you can also go into a www.facebook.com/NP area to learn more about our multicultural festival. So, well, next time we'll see you there.
You go, Yoko.